Oh, shoot, I forgot about Easter eggs. We haven't done Easter eggs yet. Oh, man.
Like it. It's fun.
We got eggs. Easter,
And I got my kid a chocolate bunny.
Easter eggs have never been a big part of. It's always a pain in the butt.
Stare at.
Yeah, until Orthodox Easter. So Hara wants to celebrate only Orthodox Easter now.
You know what I really love. Well, if you got to spare 48 hours straight, come when the Coptics celebrate their Easter, the Good Friday and Easter. It's incredible. I mean,
today is the bigger holiday because it's Palm Sunday.
Right.
I'm telling you.
Well, it's not. This isn't their Palm Sunday though.
No, not the Coptics, but the Byzantines.
Oh, okay.
It's
Yeah.
Palm Sunday is bigger, more attended than Easter in the Middle Eastern church.
Well,
they love that.
Almost
they love Palm
touch
Sunday.
on it a little bit in our sermon, kinda how we make a big deal about Palm Sunday. But yeah, the one of my favorite things about what they did, because I popped in and out of their Good Friday and Easter stuff last year and the year before that because I just didn't have the endurance to go that long because they go for a while. But it's really cool the way they've got this the ritual that they have with it, and like the picture of Jesus they bury and they cover with dirt, and then a big part of it is wiping off, uncovering the dirt. Yeah, there's a whole thing that they do, and they use these like flower petals that are, I think they have potpourri or oil or something, and so they're wiping it off, this picture of Jesus, to clearing out the tomb, I guess. And then they put the petals that they use, they put them in baggies and give them out to the congregants, and it's basically like a natural incense. Yeah. And they gave one to me, and oh my gosh, I threw it in my car because they're like, oh yeah, put it in your car. Yeah. Oh, my car, and it lasted forever. Yeah. Like months went by, and I could still smell it, and it was like, oh, it's really cool. They have a lot of real neat rituals.
Of God to make your car smell better?
Yes.
What's that?
You needed the intervention of God to make the car
yes.
smell better.
Absolutely.
I got a little one. I know how that works.
Yeah, we found one time we were cleaning out the van, and I found a chicken McNugget that was no longer a chicken McNugget. Okay, and especially since we hadn't gone to McDonald's like in months. Like it had been a span where I knew that we hadn't been there in months, and yet it was a rock. It was fossilized. Amazingly, it hadn't turned. It's not like it was a chicken nugget, which
I found a Twinkie like that one.
I'm telling you.
We're moving our display.
Artificial preservatives. We need to eat more of them. They will preserve
was it good
us.
still? I bet the Twinkie was.
Oh, it's rock hard.
Oh, really?
But it looks just like a fresh Twinkie.
We need to eat more of those artificial preservatives. They preserve us. They protect us. I feel the worst when I start on my diet. I'm like, I'm going to eat clean and healthy now. I'm like, oh God, I'm dying. It's because I don't have all that crap.
You're detoxing.
It's terrible. Anyway. So, Palm Sunday. We don't, obviously Easter is the big one for us, and then Christmas, Christmas is lesser, but it's way up there. I think Easter is the primary one, Christmas is right below it. I think Palm Sunday, whether we want to admit it or not, is right up there, just in the way that we practice it. Because we have more, we do stuff. Easter we might have special music, but our service doesn't really change. Christmas, our service doesn't really change. Palm Sunday, we have participation. We process in, we wave things, there's more put into it. So Palm Sunday is kind of it is a big deal. I think I mention this every year, but I'm going to mention it again because I'm changing my opinion on it. Is that you have more traditionally it's Palm Sunday, right? But more and more it's being celebrated as Passion Sunday. And the idea there is, to celebrate Palm Sunday, it's the focus on Palm Sunday, the triumphal entry into Jerusalem. That's the focus. That's what you do. When you celebrate it as Passion Sunday, and when churches do this, basically they don't really they don't focus solely on Palm Sunday. They make it all about the Passion. Like they'll read the entire Passion account on this Sunday. So they'll start from Palm Sunday and work all the way through, the cross. And in the past, I didn't like this. Well, I didn't. It's not that I didn't like it. It was just very uncomfortable for me when the one time I tried it down in Oklahoma, because it was the gospel reading. So I had people stand during the entire Passion reading. And it's like, for me, I'm like, I don't care. I stand all the time reading this stuff. It was the looks that I was getting from some of the people, like, because it takes a little while to get through. And so it was slightly uncomfortable. And then you get through that, and then if you have a sermon of any length, then it's like, oh my God. Because it does lengthen things. Now, we shouldn't be concerned about the length of the service. Of course we do. But anyway, it just seemed like, it seems like it's long, okay. And the idea is sort of like, well, why people kind of go to this one is because people don't necessarily come for the rest of the week. Our Holy Week observation is usually not, we don't do anything official on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. There are traditional readings that you would do. You would read the Passion accounts every day, or you can follow every day of what's going on during Passion Week. There should be extra devotions that we do, or even, in past special services that we do every day. Few churches do that. So, and less and less people are coming to Maundy, Thursday, or Good Friday services. It's just, you come Palm Sunday, you come to Easter. But even with Maundy, Thursday, and Good Friday, you have, if you just do Palm Sunday, you have Palm Sunday, yay, Jesus enters, and all of a sudden you come Thursday, and now everybody's like, it's down. It's like, okay, institutional Lord's Supper, but then he's arrested, and then Good Friday, he's crucified, and then Easter, yay, we're happy again. So you just lose a good chunk. You lose a lot of stuff. There's a lot of activity during that week. So I used to be more on Palm Sunday because I felt like, we lose Palm Sunday. I don't want to lose Palm Sunday to get to the Passion. The Passion we'll get to. We talk about it. We'll cover that for Thursday, Friday. I'm leaning more towards this again. And I think because we do miss out a good chunk of this, and we should encourage. If you got the weekly email, I put in readings for every day of the week. Some of them are a little bit longer, some of them are shorter, but it's just, I've got the readings that take you through Holy Week. So Monday of Holy Week, this is what happened. Tuesday of Holy Week, this is what happened. So I think we should encourage more of a focus throughout the week, obviously, is good. But I think there's something good to be said about bringing in a little bit more of the fullness of the Passion on Palm Sunday as you get into Holy Week. Partially because some of the people aren't going to be coming back Thursday and Friday, but also, honestly, more and more younger people, they're not growing up with a lot of this stuff. Preaching to people here, most of us have grown up in the church. We know these stories. We don't, if you got Palm Sunday and then you've got Thursday, Friday, Saturday and Sunday, right? You're missing Monday, Wednesday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Wow. Where's my coffee? All right. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. You're missing a lot of what's going on there. But we can fill it in because we know it. We've grown up with it. We're well versed in it. You get a lot more people, and young people, they don't necessarily, this is not their language. They don't know the fill-in stuff. So I'm tending to lean a little bit more into this these days. And we bring in the Palm Sunday celebration. We do bring it out. But also to bring in a little bit more of that might be useful moving forward, especially if we want to draw in people who just haven't grown up in the church. And unfortunately, we've been very blessed to have, up until recently, people who have more experience, even if their parents just took them to church and dropped them off. At least they have exposure. Younger people don't even have exposure necessarily to a lot of this stuff. A lot of it is just like coming out of the blue, like, oh, okay. So that's what we're kind of doing today. If you look on the readings I printed out, we've got our Palm Sunday readings are Zechariah, Philippians, and then John 12. But then the text I'm preaching on is actually Mark 14, which is smack dab in the middle of the week. So we're starting the service on Palm Sunday and then jumping into the middle of the week for the sermon. Because I could. Because I pulled an audible. So, what time is it? Oh, how fast is that? Cool. So, we can look at a couple things here. Honestly, Zechariah is fascinating. Zechariah is a good Palm Sunday link, and not just because of what this verse or this text says. I think this is the only time we really link into what something Zechariah says. Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout aloud, O daughter of Jerusalem. Behold, your king is coming to you. Righteous and having salvation is he, humble and mounted on a donkey, on a colt the foal of a donkey. I think this is the only time Zechariah comes up in the lectionary. I want to say this is the only time we get him. I think that's right. That sounds familiar. Which is probably right because Zechariah is a fun read because it's very apocalyptic. He's kind of reading it's like reading Revelation to a degree. Zechariah is this prophet. The exiles have returned. They're rebuilding the temple, but things have stalled. They're all excited. Yes, let's rebuild. And then there's a lull, and they stop. So Zechariah is one of two prophets. I want to say Haggai is the other one, who encouraged the people to get back to work. Like, hey, let's finish the construction here. And so it's really kind of the connections here with Jesus entering into Jerusalem, Jesus cleansing the temple, Jesus talking about tearing down the temple and rebuilding it, and then Zechariah being a prophet who was encouraging them to rebuild the temple, to finish the work of rebuilding the temple. You've got a lot of real fun connections there. And Zechariah 9 being in the second half of Zechariah, which I think if I recall, the book is split up into 2 words that God gives Zechariah. 2 words and a lot of visions, a lot of weird visions. And this is this part of the second word that he gives Zechariah, which focuses on God bringing his justice and his mercy. So it has a lot of neat connections with Jesus coming into Jerusalem. Obviously, he is bringing justice, but the justice isn't going to be met on the people, it's going to be met on him. God's justice, which punishes sin, does not fall on us, it falls on Christ. And he does bring mercy. His justice is actually falling on Jesus is his mercy for us. So in and of itself, Zechariah is just a fascinating read and connection with Palm Sunday and what's going on with what Jesus is doing. But yeah, we just get this little brief snippet that connects with the triumphal entry. So for that reason, I probably wouldn't get into it too deeply just because it's like this whole huge thing. I think there's probably a good Bible study we can probably pull out of that. But so Zechariah obviously is pulled because of that. Your king is coming to you, righteous on a donkey. Philippians 2 is very much how Jesus comes to us in humility. Have this mind among yourselves, which is yours in Christ Jesus, who though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped, but made himself nothing, taking on the form of a servant, being born in the likeness of men. Being found in human form, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on the cross. Therefore God has highly exalted him, and bestowed on him the name that is above every name, so that in the name of Jesus every knee should bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. So yeah, obviously this is how he comes, humble, as a servant, submitting himself to death on the cross. So we get that nice imagery there. The gospel obviously is literally Jesus entering into Jerusalem. John's version of the events there. But then what I picked out was Mark 14, 1 through 11, which is primarily the account of Jesus being anointed at Bethany. So the woman anoints him with this very expensive ointment. And it's bookended by the Pharisees and Judas. So it's actually really a fun little section here where you have, all right, here's how the Pharisees deal with Jesus. And at the end of this little section, here's how Judas dealt with Jesus. And here's how this woman deals with Jesus. And you see this nice, obvious contrast here, because the Pharisees wanted to kill him. And Judas wanted to make some money. But the woman anoints his head. And this is probably the most interesting, possibly contentious text that we could discuss, just based on what's going on and how some things get translated. So, oh boy, we could have fun with that.
Hint, hint.
I mean, so, well, let's just look at this. While he was at Bethany, in the house of Simon the leper, as he was reclining at table, a woman came with an alabaster flask of ointment of pure nard, very costly, and she broke the flask and poured it over his head. There were some who said to themselves indignantly, "Why was the ointment wasted like that? For this ointment could have been sold for more than 300 denarii and given to the poor." And they scolded her. But Jesus said, "Leave her alone. Why do you trouble her? She has done a beautiful thing to me. For you always have the poor with you, and whenever you want, you can do good for them. But you will not always have me. She has done what she could. She has anointed my body beforehand for burial. And truly I say to you, wherever the gospel is proclaimed in the whole world, what she has done will be told in memory of her." Which is obviously what we just did. So that's the controversial things in this would be, first, a lot of hay has been made about, for you have the poor with you always. Whenever you want, you can do good for them. Some people have taken that to be like, oh, yeah, see, the poor is always there. You don't have to worry about them. Which is like, I don't think that's what Jesus meant. But just does kind of, has been taken as a really weak justification for not dealing with the poor. Or just like, I mean, it's not good at all. But that's not really what he's saying there. In fact, if anything, he's saying like, look, you guys are focused on the money. You're saying like, look, this act has a financial dollar amount attached to it, and this is what we could have done with it. And Jesus' point is like, this is not apples and oranges, guys. She's doing something completely different. You're focused on money to be used for the poor. She's focused on preparing me for death, preparing me for burial. Two completely separate deals. And really what he says, you always have the poor with you, and whenever you want, you can do good for them, I think is kind of that has a little bit of bite to it. Like, you should be doing stuff no matter what. Like, just because there's a family, she's using this money for this, you guys should be doing all this stuff all the time. So there's that. But then the potentially contentious thing would be, did she know what she was doing? Do you think she knew that she was preparing, like, when she did that, was she consciously preparing him for burial?
We have no textual evidence in either
We
way.
don't, well, no direct textual evidence. Yeah, I
No,
agree.
we do not, because God could have given her
He
His
could have.
Spirit
Absolutely.
to do that. But that's an assumption.
It is. And if you want to be, to the letter of like, well, we don't know, and then, we don't want to go beyond God's word, even though we often do. When we have any text, we often inject ourselves a little bit and like, woo. But the interesting thing is, we don't have, it does not say specifically, like it doesn't directly say this is what she was thinking. It's a little iffy, just because Jesus says, look, She has anointed my body beforehand for burial. He has said, this is what she has done. So there is a sense where Jesus is saying, this is what she is doing. So Jesus seems to get us close to this idea, like this is the motivation for what she's doing. The text behind it is not helpful. Gotta get Greek here. Okay. Which literally, I mean, this, and I oh boy, I looked this up. I think almost every English translation that I could find translates it, she has done what she could. Over and over again, this is how it's translated. She has done what she could. She has done what she could. Literally, the text translates is what she had, and this is going to be the thing, she did. And this is the one that's kind of tricky. Like I said, what she had, she did. And when I first started going into it, I was like, okay, everybody translate this. She did what she could, which was kind of like lends itself to like, she was doing the best she could. She did.
Sort of implies she knew something was coming.
Well, and
Yeah.
kind of, but there's a little bit of ambiguity there,
Yeah.
where it kind of waffles a little bit. The thing that initially I had to raise an eyebrow at was our latest Mark commentary by Jim Veltz, who is the big Greek guy at Concordia St. Louis. The dude knows Greek better than Jesus. Obviously, I don't mean that, but I mean he knows Greek very well.
We heard.
Ridiculously. Yeah, I'm on.
Yeah.
Bring it on.
Expect an email later.
Well, believe me, if I'm going to get an email, it won't be about that. So he translates this a little bit differently, and like as far as I know, he might be. This is one that I've never really heard before, and it's interesting. And he translates this more of so what or that, and he takes this. She has come to understand or grasp. And then she did. Because if you look up this echo here, this has so many possible, she had, she took, she kept, she understood, she knew, whatever. There's a lot of different ways that this can go. And there's always a problem whenever you have one of those words where it can be translated as like 20 different things, is that some people will translate it to 20 different ways. Like, oh, you can have. So that's where the context obviously comes into play. We've used we have English words that mean different things, same word that means different things in different contexts. So this isn't an unusual phenomenon. He takes this in this way, basically because, well, first of all, because Jesus says this is what she did. She's preparing my body for burial. There doesn't seem to be any announcement of like, well, she doesn't quite get this, or they later understood, or she later understood, whatever. It's just she's done this for me. But also just this kind of like, he's been talking about his death. Nobody else seems to get it, or they're just like, nobody really grasps it. And yet she is preparing she's pouring all this ointment on him, preparing his body for burial. Kind of if she has received some kind of inspiration from God, God has made her aware, granted her understanding, then, well, that makes sense what she'd be doing. Because he's going to die a criminal's death. And a criminal wouldn't necessarily be afforded the luxuries of a proper burial, preparation, whatever. I mean, they had to go in, ask for permission, like, hey, let's take him down. Let us have the body so we can deal with it the way it should be. So it normally, as a criminal, he wouldn't have been afforded those things. So it seems to be that there is something going on here that maybe that might be a better way to come at it. Now, it's like I said, this is almost every other translation is very direct like this, and there's most people will often like, well, we don't know. You know, it doesn't say that she did, but for me at least, I'm coming to the idea that, you know what, I think there's probably enough in the context and surrounding it to say, you know what, there's a possibility, and it wouldn't be out of line, really. You look at the thief on the cross. I mean, he understood. I mean, he had saving faith, right? Well, how did he get it? He wasn't baptized like there. You know, he wasn't. You know, your Anabaptist roots would
No.
would point that out to me and say, "See, baptism, you don't need to be baptized because the thief on the cross wasn't baptized."
But I'm not. That's not just Anabaptists who think that.
Oh, I know. I was just poking fun at you.
Because God can save whomever He wants to
Sure,
save, and
sure.
it's not up to us or our doctrines who God saves.
True. No, but that's the cudgel that they use to, you know.
But my
knock us
question
on.
is, I understand that translation and that rationale, and I think that's wonderful. But I'm going to be the devil's advocate for a minute.
Yes.
So are you saying that every Greek translator throughout history, this man today in 2023?
Well, that's why I said I had
24,
pause.
and you know, and people who have been translating this since who were closer to the original Greek as in proximity of living. So every other translator of every other New Testament Greek document they have failed until today. That's where I pause.
That's the what would give me pause too. I actually anticipated that.
Okay, good.
Because
Did you anticipate it from me?
actually yes. No, because one of the things that always sticks in my craw, and I've been looking for a translation that does this, and none of them do, is the whole whenever there's a handful of times where Jesus does something and he says, your faith has saved you. No ambiguity. The Greek text is sozo, saves. It has saved you. Every stinking English translation says your faith has made you well. Your faith has...
Are you sure every one of them?
Well, all the popular ones that I brought up, but I even looked up the Vulgate, St. Jerome.
Yeah.
And he says, your faith has made you whole, which technically is not what the Greek says. And so I was like, well, wait a sec, because I anticipated the whole, like, how far back do we have, because I was looking for a different translation, because I said, all of them are translating it like this.
Right.
He's suggesting this, somebody's got to come up with something.
Right.
And you're right, it's like nobody does. So I'm skeptical in that sense, like, is this an innovation? But then I took that one, I'm like, yeah, but you know what, the Greek, this your faith has saved you, every translation kind of gets away, and I think Jerome gets maybe the closest by saying he has made you, your faith has made you whole. Which, you know, you could say, well, you know, oftentimes your faith has made you well, that's Weasley, that's like, your faith has made you well. No, it saved you. Now he gets closer with made you whole because it's not just that I would view in terms of looking at it, not just the physical healing, but your faith as well. So I think he gets closest to it. But he wasn't directly like your faith has saved you, and that's what bugged me. Like I said, every translation I've seen, if you find a translation where it says your faith, now there is
What
a couple
verse?
spots. The one I was looking
Verse?
up was Mark, I think it was Mark 5:34. Look that up and see if that's the one I'm thinking of. Because there is a couple spots where the translation is your faith has saved you. So it's like all these translations that change saved to made you well.
Oh, close to me.
In another spot, they actually say your faith has saved you. So I don't know what the deal is. I'll ask God when I get up there.
It may be that faith has made thee whole.
Yeah, and that's the closest we get to it. But it's like, why don't you just say saved? Because that's what the text's, like that's what the Greek actually says.
Another aid to interpretation would be historical context.
Yeah.
And it seems odd that she is doing this, anointing in this way
Mhm.
before death.
Right.
So where is that coming from? Historically, is that something that was done for people who were dying, or?
I don't think so. And I think even like you could point to the anointing, like people were anointed. Certainly she could have done it to honor him, as a sign of whatever. But I think it's the ostentation. It's break. Well, the flask would have had to be broken to be. The fact that she breaks it is not a big deal. It had to be broken to be open. But just it's very expensive. I mean, it's like if you want to honor the guy, you can honor the guy. You're going above and beyond a little bit. And we don't know, like, was this her family's heirloom? Was it like, rainy day fund where she could sell it if she needed to? Because it was 300 denarii, so a denarii was a day's wage, so it was a lot of money. So yeah, it wouldn't. I mean, preparing for burial would be preparing when they're dead. So the weirdness of that would be like, yeah, she's preparing me for burial, but you're alive. Your body's not, we're not there yet. So I think there's enough, and I'm not really suggesting that we should, all translations need to change it like this. I think there's a way you could read that into it. I think this is just a lot more direct and just comes more, it's more of there's a text that's a little ambiguous. I think the context helps to fill that in. But yeah, I always want to preface that with like, this is a different translation than most, if not all. But I think there is something to that. And going along the lines of, could God have given her that understanding? It's like, oh, sure. Now again, we don't want to go beyond the scripture and say, well, God did this. Like, okay. But there are some things, kind of like what we talked about last week. Were the other disciple, were the apostles baptized? It's like, well, according to scripture, explicitly, we don't know. We'd have to say, according to the biblical evidence, we have no idea. We can't know for sure. But context, historical, is like, yeah, they were most assuredly. You couldn't even, Philip and the Ethiopian eunuch, like, well, yeah, you need to be baptized. I never was, but hey, it's good for you. Like, no, the man was baptized.
Couldn't that all be true?
What?
I mean, the original understanding would be like the widow's mite. She gave all that she had.
Sure.
And she has come to understand or grasp.
Yes.
She gave all she had because of that.
Yeah.
To the Lord.
Yeah. And I think that's
That's what I'm thinking.
the proper way to view it.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
She gave it to God. She gave it to the temple, if you want to really get there.
Well, sure. The living temple,
Right.
Sure. Although, and that's an interesting, where you jump to there, is because where I'm not going with it in the sermon, is you could take that and be like a stewardship message. Like, see, this is the proper way is to give.
Martin Luther Chapel will.
Oh.
We
Well,
always go stewardship.
Well,
not to giving to them, but to like the world. We're always.
Oh, okay.
It's always a servant.
Well, they don't have the Mark 14 text for today, so they might not go.
You never know what they're going to do over there.
But so I don't immediately go to the stewardship side of it, just because she's preparing him for death. I mean, what she is giving everything of herself, and I think there's a bit more to it, that it's not solely like, yes, when you are coming to Jesus, you need to give all that you have. It's like, it's kind of like the rich man. Give away everything you have, sell everything you have, and follow me. And he wasn't willing to. And it's like, well, that was a heart issue. He wasn't willing to trust in God and say, oh, okay, well, what are these things? Where she is like the proper picture of it. It's not that she like, go and do likewise, go sell 300 denarii worth of stuff, but you're saying she's giving what is valuable over. She is saying this, what is this to?
She is giving from her excess, which the Lord commands in the Torah. You give from your excess. The Lord tells you to give with a whole heart from your increase.
Right.
To him. So that is what she's done. She's given from her increase. This is her increase. This is not a needed thing for her survival. It is her increase to have burial oil laying around the house. So her heart is in her intention is correct.
Her intention, preparing him for burial and all that. We get all that. It's just the fact that it's in relation to she is preparing his body for burial. It's just.
But
I
they're
think you can
talking
take it in
about
weird places
mitzvahs
once you
right
get there.
here in both paragraphs. Because the argument is the people who are contending her are not exactly incorrect by saying you should have given this excess to
Well,
the
they're not
poor
wrong, right.
for a mitzvah. And then he's saying that you're looking at the mitzvah incorrectly, the good deed incorrectly, right? They're
Well,
both
that's-
talking about charitable giving,
Right.
right?
And that's why I would probably not make it a direct stewardship message, is just because it is drawing a
Are you
connection
talking
of-
about just stewardship as in just giving to the church
Yes,
building?
yes.
Oh, I thought you were talking about stewardship as in giving to the people for the good of the people, as in around
Oh, no,
charity.
no, and I mean, where I
Right,
would,
humanity, that's what I'm thinking.
Right,
of
oh, no,
stewardship.
I'm
That-
just-
That
and I
I'm
s-
correcting online that Martin Luther Chapel is not always begging for money. They're telling us
Okay,
to go
because
and
that's where I'm like,
serve
ooh,
others. We're serving
I don't know
others.
who you are, strange woman who I've never seen before.
No, it's just all about service, and so that's
Love
what
you,
I
Kurt. And James.
meant. He knows what I'm talking about.
No,
He knows me.
yes. No, I was talking about stewardship very narrowly.
Okay,
In
okay.
that sense.
That's
Because I
fine.
mean, you definitely could make it. She was giving. Well, and like whenever I talk about stewardship in here, it's like even in giving to the church, it's to give so that our mission continues. Like, I only want people to give if they see this as like, yes, we are sharing good news. We are bringing good news to people. When we stop doing that, then we shouldn't be
But
supporting.
giving-
If you give out of love, you're giving correctly. If you don't, then you shouldn't give.
Yeah.
Right, and giving to God in the temple isn't just giving to the temple building, it's giving to the provision for
I know.
the poor. That's what I mean.
Well, and ideally
Giving
that's
to
what
God.
we do. It's communicating that. See, like in the church, that's easily communicated. I think I think by and large we get that. It's the outside that doesn't. One of the biggest things knocks about against church is like all you care about is money. All you want is money.
Well, that's fair.
And so that's why whenever I think stewardship, I'm thinking not just like what we need to do just as a form of our worship, as a form of our, what we give first to God and all that stuff, but just elaborating that and explaining it more so that way it's not that narrow focus of like, oh, you just want, you want to, just run the building, whatever. It's like,
And that's really a popular movement and thought right now out there in the
Oh, yeah.
world, that churches are just a corporation
Absolutely.
and an institution, and they just want money, and
Yeah, that's
we can worship God without all that, and that's
Right.
really popular right now.
that's at least when I looked, like whatever the latest studies were 5 years ago. Wait, I got here 5 years ago. 7 years ago. The like top 5, if you ask somebody why you wouldn't want to go to church or your issue with pastors, because I was curious, and like the number 1 or number 2 thing was all they care about is money. So it's a fine dance we have to do when you've got outsiders to be like, we need to talk about it correctly and rightly, and it is a large part of our worship. I mean, Jesus says more about money than anything, which is like, yeah, it's our biggest idol. So how do you balance that with trying to communicate properly to the outside world is always a tricky deal. Cool. See, we're all on the same page. It takes us a while to get there, but we get there. So anyway, that's where I'm going in today's sermon. So you're prepped. But other than that, although with the importance of being here later in the week is just it fills out. It gives you the full picture. We do need more than just Palm Sunday, obviously, but I'm coming around to that. I'm not reading the whole Passion reading, so there's that.
You can go to the Catholic Church and they will for you.
Oh, I
They do
know.
it like a play today.
Yeah. Well, we started. We started by waving our branches, and then we stopped.
Well, and I see the emphasis now. It's a difference in the shift. Are you okay?
Yes.
Okay. It's
He's
a
dying.
difference between being a theologian of the cross and the theologian of glory. Yes, it is, because Yeah, I think so, because passion, the whole reading it, like emphasizing that more is going to the cross. If somebody thinks that the cross, a theologian of the cross, is like the most important,
Right,
the biggest crux, and then if the biggest crux for a different branch would be the resurrection, then you would, Jesus is the king, yay, here comes the king, and yay, he's resurrected, there's the king. Do you see what I'm saying?
I think so.
Yeah.
I
Because I was trying to figure out in my mind quietly while you were talking, like why the emphasis? Because I've seen churches. Well, it's a very select, narrow view of churches that Palm Sunday is like, oh my gosh, like huge,
yeah.
and the whole like. Yes, they do other things on the other days, but it's not like like the Roman Catholics with like the whole like Stations of the Cross, and the emphasis on that is not so much.
Right,
you know
right,
what
right.
I mean?
The fun thing about that would be, I think the emphasis is placed incorrectly there, where the Palm Sunday celebration could be toned down, or you swap it with Ascension, because Ascension would be the proper, like for going all out and like woo, time to celebrate, would probably be the Ascension, because that's the victory parade. That's
But the hymn, like, okay, I'm thinking like the hymn that's chanted, oh my goodness, so much. It's like the Christ is risen from the dead hymn is just like, and that's on Easter and beyond. It's like
Jesus.
oh my-
Wait, which one?
Christ. Well, it's not.
Or
Lutheran
Jesus
Church,
Christ
it's an
is
Easter.
risen too?
No,
okay.
it's an Eastern Christian thing,
Oh,
but it's.
I thought you said Easter and Christian.
No,
I'm like,
no,
well, we do
no,
both.
Eastern Christian thing, like the whole
Eastern.
excitement that
Okay.
that Jesus rose from the dead is more emphasized than the dying on the cross. Do you see what I'm
Okay,
saying?
okay, I got you.
Christ being dead will die no more.
Right,
That's the
because
one.
he triumphed death, by overcoming it. He
Well, I'm just wondering if
trampled
the
death.
kind of the ascension of Palm Sunday. I mean, see, I would look at like if you're going to theology of glory, theology of cross, like the people celebrating Jesus that day were more of the theology of glory, and that they were looking very worldly, sort of like that.
No, I don't think theology of glory is just worldly. I think it's anything that's not theology of the cross hardware.
Well, but I mean, like, if I was to use that, that's how I would go about it. But yeah, and I don't know if we could probably have a whole thing about why Ascension Day isn't really a thing.
But it's an emphasis thing. Like
well,
it's
that's-
an
yeah.
emphasis thing, and I can see how, understand that.
Well, yeah, I could probably see a lot of ways that
Because
might
the
be problematic.
whole
actually,
crucifixion would be more emphasized in certain churches than others.
Well,
Even though
sure.
it's emphasized in all, but
Right.
do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. But yeah, I think. Yeah, I would. I'd be excited to see more of a Ascension emphasis, not just because Ascension. But I mean, that's the period at the end of the sentence, really. Other than Christ's return, that's the Christ, taking the right hand, sitting at the right hand of God the Father. That's like
Rose from the dead, for goodness sake.
His
That's, like,
reign
so
is-
exciting.
inaugurated. I mean, it's like everything is building. And yeah, the resurrection obviously huge, but it's his ascension that, now he's, even resurrection, he's physically located in one spot, in his humanity, and now when he ascends, he is over all things. So it's a bit fuller like that. Well, that was a shotgun approach to Bible study. Covered everything. Cool. All right, cool. Well, hope you enjoy the sermon.